and thank Deputies Murphy, Boyd Barrett, Smith, Kenny and Barry for bringing forward this bill. Government is opposing the bill. Aside from the technical and practical operational shortcomings of the bill, it would in all likelihood face significant risk of legal challenge and is highly likely to have a severely detrimental effect on supply of rental property in what is already a constrained market. Government is working to safeguard and grow the supply of rental accommodation. I note that People Before Profit Solidarity's bill today is identical to the private member's bill, which was debated and defeated in July last year. Then and now the bill seeks to address rising rents in the country, similar to the private member's bills tabled by Sinn Féin in recent years. Reducing rents in such an arbitrary way as proposed in the bill is not going to increase supply of rental accommodation. Supplies are constrained, rent rise if demand outstrips supply. We also need to strike a balance between restricting the level of rents tenants are paying and keeping ordinary landlords in the system. Landlords leaving the sector does not help tenants. It is worth remembering that 70% of landlords own just one rental property. 86% of landlords own two rental properties. I know that Deputy Barry referenced big institutional landlords, but this is the reality, mostly small landlords. The simple fact of the matter is that we need residential rental accommodation. We need landlords, and we need a well-regulated sector. Rental properties need to be maintained, and any increase in maintenance costs need to be accommodated. Costs will rise whether rents are reduced or not. We should remember that approximately 2% of all tenancies become subject to dispute resolution in the Residential Tenancies Board. The rental sector is working well for most landlords and tenants. Since 2019, the RTB has expressed legal powers and is resourced to investigate and sanction improper conduct by landlords, including the imposition of unlawful rent increases in rent pressure zones. Landlords can face a sanction of up to €30,000. I believe that if we are to introduce an across-the-board reduction in rents, setting aside whether it would be legally permissible, we would see more exits from the sector, thus stifling that much-needed supply that we talk about. The 2% cap, where the harmonised index of consumer prices is higher, introduced in December 2021, constrains rents increases for an estimated 75% of all tenancies which are located in RPZs. The Government recognises the legal issue at play and introduced measures that balance the need to stabilise rents with the constitutional property rights of landlords. In the time available, I will address the substantive issues in this bill. The Deputies propose in Section 2 of their bill to amend Section 19 of the RTA to cap rents at 25% of local monthly nominal median household disposable income for households of the equivalent size, or 25% of national monthly nominal median household disposable income for households of the relevant size, whichever is the lower, as determined by the National Rent Authority, which is proposed to be established under Section 3 of this bill. Reduce existing rents in line with the cap within 12 months of commencement, and provide that an exemption may apply for luxury accommodation as defined by the proposed National Rent Authority. Notwithstanding the policy desirability or otherwise of setting and aspiring to our lower ceiling on net housing costs, i.e. 25% of disposable income, such a ceiling would be somewhat lower than the metrics used to assess housing affordability generally. The Eurostat indicator of housing cost over burden rate is the percentage of the population living in a household where the total housing costs minus housing allowances is more than 40% of disposable household income. Other affordability metrics use between 30% and 35% of total disposable household income, but they are still somewhat above the ceilings proposed in the private member's bill. There is no empirical evidence to demonstrate that 25% is a meaningful threshold of affordability. Housing stress and deprivation are predicted by low incomes and certain household characteristics, not by simple ratios which are independent of actual household income. Such a method of determining rent price ceilings could incentivise landlords to cherry-pick tenants. Large households would be favoured over smaller households, rising risks associated with overcrowding. Single-person households seem likely in many instances to be excluded from the market, as couples would be in a position to offer higher rent. Detaching price from unit size, location and quality would have detrimental impacts for the operation of the rental market, and such impacts could be severe, and unintended consequences such as overcrowding seem likely. Such a system of rent setting would have arbitrary effects. The rent paid by equivalent low-income households would vary considerably depending on labour market conditions, and that variation would not be due to market dynamics, which arguably at least equilibrate over time by regulatory decree. The measures as proposed by this bill are likely to result in the withdrawal of many units from the rental sector and to severely constrain any future supply. The proposal that the new National Rent Authority be comprised of tenant and employee representatives only does not balance the constitutionally protected rights of landlords, nor is there any proposed member with expertise in this area, nor any independent member. The Government's actions to date in addressing high rents are more comprehensive and targeted than the private member's bill. A key element of existing rent control policy centres on designation of RPZs in areas where rents are highest and increasing most. The Planning and Development Housing and Residential Tenancies Act of 2016 introduced the rent predictability measure to moderate rent increases in those parts of the country where rents are highest and rising fastest, and these are RPZs. The Residential Tenancies No. 2 Act of 2021 introduced measures in July 2021 to extend the operation of RPZs until the end of 2024 and prohibit any necessary rent increase in an RPZ from exceeding general inflation as recorded by the Harmonised Index of Consumer Prices. The Act also provides that rent reviews outside of RPZs can, until 2025, occur no more frequently than biannually. This provides rent certainty for tenants outside of RPZs for a minimum of 2 years period at a time. To address the rent affordability challenges building on foot of the unexpectedly fast rising inflation rate, as recorded by HISIP, the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act of 2021 was enacted to provide, from the 11th of December 2021, a cap of 2% per annum pro rata on rent increases in RPZs where the inflation rate is higher. In all cases, Section 19.1 of the Residential Tenancies Act 2004-22 prohibits the setting of a rent that exceeds market rent. The Government is helping tenants and taking account of the constitutionally protected property rights and of the need to a secure supply of much-needed residential rental accommodation, and I believe that we are being fair. The Government opposes this bill. We do not believe that the People Before Profit Solidarity's bill would ultimately help renters. The temporary fix proposed would negatively impact on the supply of rental properties, ultimately building future pressures on future rents. The measures introduced by Government to date provide a timely, effective and proportionate response to help all tenants in RPZs by requiring that any rent increase does not exceed the 2% cap. Tenants outside of RPZs have rent certainty for at least 2 years, as their rent reviews can occur no more frequently than every second year. Deputies, aside from the legal issues, the Government believes that a blanket reduction of rents will not work in the long term. It puts at risk investment in supply and the upkeep of rental properties. Supply is key to reducing rents in a stable and in a long-term way. I genuinely thank all deputies who intend to contribute to this morning's debate, and Government earnestly seeks to resolve the problems that we have in housing. If any deputy has a proposal that will help alleviate the crisis, the Government will consider its merits. We have done in the past. The Government will implement appropriate policy proposals, and I do not see this morning's bill as an appropriate policy proposal, and as such the Government is opposing its second stage. The objective nature of RPZ designation respects the constitutionality and protected property rights of landlords and aims to safeguard continued investment in the sector by existing and new landlords to deliver the requisite supply of high-quality rental accommodation. Under the updated Housing for All Action Plan, my department has commenced a review of the operation of the private rental sector. A report on the review will inform policy considerations ahead of Budget 2024 and guide future policy direction for the rental market. The review will involve public and stakeholder engagement and take account of the significant regulatory changes over the past several years. The Government will consider and act on the review recommendations and conclusions, and how our housing system could provide an efficient, viable, affordable, safe and secure framework for both landlords and tenants. And we do welcome your input into this review. And just in the few seconds I have remaining, Deputy Smith referenced the referendum on the right to housing, and Minister O'Brien did confirm at committee yesterday that we are moving with that, and I think that Government is committed to a referendum on housing.
Thank you, Minister.